Okay, welcome. In this video, we're going to finish our to-do API application, and we're going to continue pretty much in the base that we have for our robust, I would call it like that, robust Node.js application. I know that it's not bulletproof, but it's in a better shape for a production environment. So what we're going to be using now is we're going to fake a database connection. That means that we're going to create a local array. We're going to save all the to-dos, and then we're going to create different elements or functions that will query add things to the to-do itself. So let's get started. So let's go to our utils, right? And there let's actually create new file. Let's do this one to be the to-dos. And by default, let's do let to-dos equal an empty node, right? And that should be our database, right? A simple way to have those to-dos to be there. Let's actually, can I use cons? I don't know. I'm not sure about that. Well, let's just let because it's going to change over time, right? So here we just need to start creating different functions. So for example, I will create one to get all, and this function will return my to-dos, right? Of course we need to export it. So let's actually have a little more like this. Okay. Let's create another one called add to do. We send it to do, and we're going to push it, right? As simple like that. Um, what other one do we need to have? Oh, for that one, we just need to create an ID. So let's do a cons to do. Let's call this base to do. And it's going to be an object, right? Where we have an ID, a text, right? And completed false, right? So it's going to be the base to do. And the idea is just to be able, and let's do this at the beginning in order to always to have something. To do dot push or base to do, right? It's just to create an object by default. To do is never reassign it. Okay, so I can actually do cons here. There you go. And let me remove the add to do. I don't want to have that one for now. Export default. Actually, no, let's keep that one there. So this should be the one that we needed. Now I will run npm install nano ID. Nano ID, what it does is a simple function that will create an ID like this one, right? So we can actually just call it as a function and that will be created. That's it. Because we want to specify a random number as an ID for the to-do itself. So let's import it, right? And let's do that. The default ID should be nano ID as a function, right? Should be something like that. And text is test to do item. So in order to pull it, and in order to want to show you, is we need to get a get request that will get the to-dos the way that we need it. So that means in the route, we're going to create a folder for API, right? And then we're going to create an index, and we're going to create a new one called to-dos, right? Just to keep the naming convention that we usually have it here. And let's make to the index, actually to the to-dos, we need to do exactly the same. We import the router from Express, right? And then we need to do const router equal the router. And whenever we do router.get request response, we're going to send to-dos, right? That's pretty much what we need to do, and we need to export default the router itself. And this one actually needs to be closed. There you go. Something like that. But we need to get the to-dos from our utils. So let's actually import something from, let's go to the utils to-dos, right? And let's they get to-dos. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to do something very simple. Const to-dos equal to get to-dos, and we're going to send back the to-dos by itself, right? That's what we're going to be doing, making the calls. This we call the service, let's call it like that, and we're going to send that object. Remember that this one, what it does is just return the to-dos element, and the to-dos element for right now is just have this base to-do that we just created as default, right? That's it. So in order to make this router work, we need to change the index in the API, and the index should be something really simple. Remember, import router from Express, import to-dos from the to-dos, right? Const router, router use to-dos as the to-do. That's going to be the endpoint, and we're going to export the default router. And in our index, we're going to import our API from API, and our router use the API in the API endpoint. This is what it's doing is we're creating the API endpoint, and inside the API we have another API /to-dos, and for that /to-dos, when we do a GET request, we're going to get all the to-dos that we have in our application. So let's check if this actually working the way they're supposed to. Let's do npm run that, and we can actually call my Thunder client. So we have the hello there. If I call the API /to-dos, I have my test to do there, right? I have my item working the way they're supposed to. Pretty neat, right? So we are able to pull it up and get my to-do item with a simple GET request. So we have our first endpoint, and it's working pretty neat. So let's continue working with the REST endpoint in order to finish our CRUD application itself. That means that we should be able to create a to-do through a post, read a specific to-do by ID, and we should be able to update, and we should be able to change the status in this case, right? So we have the completed false by default. So let's continue working. Let's get it everything, and we can actually do added and get to those. Cool. So let's get back through tills, to-dos, and we have the new to-dos that need to be sent, and that one is going to be pushed, right? So let's make this call in our router, and our router, we're going to make a post request to the same endpoint, right? And we're going to set request response. You're going to import add to do, right? And let's make this okay. We're going to get it to do from the body. That's very important. Is where we're going to be sent it, and we're going to add it to do, and you're going to get back that particular to do, right? That should be it, and it's actually really straightforward. Well, before we proceed, we need to generate the ID. So the way to do it is we can actually send. Okay, we can do it. So we need to push the to do. We need to say the to do it should be this format. So that means that we need to send an object, an ID, that will be our nano ID, right? And the rest of the to do element itself, right? Let's try it. So our get request, get done. If I change this to a post, and let me actually do it through my collection. Let's do a new collection. Get, let's call this to-dos API, to-do API. And let's make a new request called get all, and the get all will be from localhost 3000 API to-dos, right? This is my get all element. Let's create another one. Let's create a new request called add to do. And now in this add to do, it should change to a post. It's going to the same route, but we need to send a body with our to do element. And our to do element, we have it right here without the ID. The ID is going to be generated when we save it. So we need to pretty much send this to here without the ID, of course. We can call this our text. The format that is required is with double quotes, comma, and the completed should be like this. Huh? And we remove this one. I don't know if we can send it complete like this. Yes, that actually works. So add it from API. So if I change this, oops, I believe I changed to the wrong one. Oh my god, I really close it? Yes, I really close it. So let me get everything. Let me post it here. Let's do a post. And my body will change to, we call it that is supposed to be again text, right? Add it from API and or completed should be false. We send that, it worked. We see a 200. Let's do a get all, and we can see that the next to do is right there. But it actually didn't save it correctly. So probably we need to do something about that. And let's see what was the issue itself. So we actually send it to do element. Let's actually print that. So let's import logger from till loggers, and I believe the tils are not there. There you go. And we can actually do logger dot log dot info, getting the to dos. Let's verify that. Getting to dos. Okay. And let's just to verify that the to do element is being saved the way they're supposed to, right? Let's close this one. We don't need it. We don't need this. The router, yes. This one doesn't, and this one doesn't. So we just need the utils and the controller per se. So let's call it again, and let's add it. We have the element here. Send it, and the to-do is undefined. And our application is undefined because Vue.js or Express app is actually incomplete. I remember, sorry, I forget that section. So what is happening here is that our application is not able to read the body tag. That means that we need to extend our app to be a little more functional. So in our main index, yes, just before the middlewares, we need to extend our application to use extra middlewares, and those middlewares are going to be two different ones. These two. Here we're going to, and this actually came from Express directly. This to extend the URL encoded and to use the JSON object as body. And that will allow us to parse the JSON and look the request where content type header match the option. And your encoded, it parses bodies, only looks at the request where content type header match this back type of option, right? This will help us to handle the information the way it's supposed to. So now if we do a post, we can see we have the new to-do item. We can actually see that it's now reading it from the database. Right, actually before we save it to the database. And if we query all, both elements are now saved the way it's supposed to. So it's almost there. So we're able to add a new one, and we're able to get everything. But what happens if I send something like, I don't know, a stuff, for example? I can do here, whatever. What about if I send this? That one gets saved too. And whenever I get it, I have extra information that I don't need, right? So that means that we're missing some validation. So before we proceed with adding the to-do, we need to validate the to-do. What is the one that we use for validation? Well, we already have it. Import joy from joy, right? We're going to create a to-do schema. So we do const to-do schema. It's going to be an object, and that object doesn't require, it will require a text element. There's a string that is required. Let's just make it that it will be, I don't know, mean will be 10, right? Let's do something like that, that you cannot be shorter than that. And we can have the completed boolean. And let's, instead of doing require, let's do default false. And that should be it. That's our schema. The ID, we don't need to send it because the ID is already there somehow, right? The ID will be generated when it gets saved. So this is actually the data that we're going to be sending. Need to be a text and a completed, and that's it. Nothing else. So having those, we should be able to do to be actually validated. So we can actually, let's change this to success. Get another to-dos, and we can do this validating or to do itself. The to-do object, and this should be in this type of bracket, unless we can do to cons. Let's pull up an error. Oops, where we can actually validate that, right? And if we have an error, lower error going to be new error or validation error itself. And it should be like this, right? And that should be it. If it's passed, we just need to return the error. And because we're returning an error, we're actually creating a new one. In theory, we should be able to use the error endpoint automatically. If this actually pass and everything is okay, we just need to add it, right? To do push. So we need to, oops, something like this. Success. We can see validated. That particular to-do just got validated, right? And let's save it just like that. And let's see what actually happened. So let's get all. We have the test one. Let's add a new one. And let's try to send it. And we have an issue. Stuff is not allowed, right? But we're still able to throw a new error here. So probably what we can actually do is we can do next element in our post. We add it to do. We are returning the error. We can say const. We can say error equal from that, right? If error came up, we just do next error, pretty much. And it should be in the return, should be next error. If not, we just send it to do itself. Let's see if this actually works. We send it. And now it's still giving it the. Let's try this one. And we have an issue here where, oh, here. Return to do, right? Let's do this. Let's check. So we have the error, validation error, stuff is not allowed. And we return the error. In this case, this one, we just return the to do because we are not sending, okay, cannot set header after they're sent to the clients. What is the issue there? In the controller. Let's actually call this as response. If the response have an error, we're going to send that. If not, we just send the response. Let's actually send the response itself. And let's comment this out. So let's actually get the response and let's see what can actually send through our element. So you send this. Okay. So it's actually sending the error itself, but it's sending us at 200 because it's not generating an error message itself. And it's giving the message that stuff is not allowed, right? So if we do something like this, it's not working because we need to send the error as a child element from the response. So we're going to return error like this. If not, we're going to return the to do. We try it again. Stuff is not allowed. Hmm. Let's do next. Here. Let's see what happened. Internal server error. Yeah, because we're sending us an error itself. Validation error stuff is not allowed. Okay. So probably that login, where we keep the login? In the controller or here? Let me just check my console. Don't log my response just to see where it's actually coming from. And we have an error element. That one is there. Okay. And it gets lost because I never sent something back. So probably what I need to do, this one need to happen. Next response error if the response error is there. There you go. Internal server, stuff is not allowed. Validation error. Pretty neat, right? So something that we can do here is the error response. Instead of doing a 500, let's do, let's install another dependencies that will help us handle the status codes a little bit better. So instead of remember the codes directly, let's do npm install and I believe it's called HTTP status code. And let's import those. Import from HTTP status code, and this one will be a reason. And one of the reason is if the response is an error, that we have that means that validation failed. That means that the object was not created the way it's supposed to. So probably should be bad request. What is happening here? Bad request is not being used anymore? Hmm. So probably instead of bad request, we can use not allow it. Hmm. It's deprecated, all of them. Oh, wait, probably this is not the way. Um, let's import the status code, and we can send here our response dot status code. Something like that. The, the status we send it to a batch request, and then we send the error by itself that we allow us to have instead of 500. I have a oops npm run that. There you go. A batch request. So have a better handling of the error itself. Cool. This one should not be here. So if we don't have the error that we need to send, respond.send respond dot to do, right? That means if we send this, it's a bar request. How can we do here in the else? It's one or the other. So we have the bar request, but if the request is correctly, like this, it's at 200, okay. Yeah, I like it. But instead of 200, that it was okay, probably we need to add the created element. So we need to do res.status code created, right? In order to have consistency there. So now we have the 200 was created. Perfect. The only thing that we need to do, we need to return it with the ID. But for that, we need to define to find by ID. And we can see that later. What else? What else? Mm, that should be it. And also, we should be able to remove the completed, and it should be fine. But we should be able to get status to do because the completed should be the way it's supposed to. This one will fail. Well, text is required. This should work, so that means that we get over here. We've been saving several ones. Perfect. But the only thing is that let's go to the schema. Let's actually make this one require. Probably it's going to be better. And we have a verbal responses here. Okay, here we have the to do, we have created. So the only things that we need to add, I believe, um, is this one over here. So we don't need to actually return the to do itself, we need to return it with the ID. So we can do something. Const new to do equal to this one, right? And then we're going to actually push the need to do, and that's the object that we want to get, right? So get all, we just have one. Oh, we have one because whenever the server restarts, this is actually saved just in memory. So it's not persisting the data. So let's add a new one. It was created, but I didn't get it back. Why? But it's right there. Oh, wait. Because we respond with the to do, and we actually need to respond with the new to do. That's it. So that means we send it, we get the need to do created, and this was the object that was created with this information. So now we have the validation working and the get and the post request, right? Pretty cool. I believe this is actually pretty neat. So we should be able now to get one var ID. So let's do export const get to do singular with ID. Logger says getting to do with ID that one. Return to do is fine with the to do equal. That was actually really smart. And the pretty cool thing is that we should be able to handle what is called different dynamic routes too. So we have the get and the purpose. So let's actually do router. Actually, let's import the get to do, right? And let's do router.get. And let's do with the ID. It came out right away. Get to do request from the parameters, the ID, because the name that we created, this is a parameter. So from our request parameters ID, it's going to send it to the to do. And we're going to, if the to do is there, we're going to send it. If not, the status code not found, right? And we send that right there. As simple as that. We can actually do it through the send, or we can actually do it through next too. We can do it next here. And because we already have an error handler, we just change the status and we can do next. Um, not found. As simple as that. So let's get one, everything. Let's create a new one. There you go. Let's get all of them. And let's get this ID. And we should be able to get just the first one. So let's duplicate this one. Let's call this rename to get var ID. And our to do's forward slash that particular ID, which we're able to get only that one. There you go. We get all of them, but with that particular ID, which we're able to get a specific one. Now, if we send an ID that doesn't exist, we just get a not found, right? And we don't have a correct error over here. We can actually do Let's do new error not found, probably. So we do that, we have not found error, we can have it there. Now, we can do a little more specific, and we can do something like this, not found ID to do with ID, and we actually send request dot params dot ID, right? We can be as specific as we want. So that means that something doesn't exist, but not found to do with ID and that particular ID that we're sending, right? Let's get all. Let's create a couple of those. We're posting. Let's get everything. And we should be able to get only one. So if I get this ID in particular and paste it here, I should get only one. And that just worked. So now we can actually read one, we can add, we can, and we can read all, right? So let's do a put. Let's actually do a change. For that, let's actually create a new one. Over here, let's do export const up, update to do. Okay. And it was right away. Easy to implement. It went validating the to do. Let's actually, or update, and let's here validating the to do to add, right? We validated to do, we had the error, with validation error, and we return it. It's not index. I find that particular index itself, and then that to do in that particular index. I just change it with the new content, and I return the to do that is in that new index by itself. I'm probably stay on doing this. I should be able just to do something like this, and should be more than enough. Okay, that means that I can get all. Let's add a new one, right? Let's get that particular ID. Let's duplicate this one. And let's change the name to update to do, right? Instead of post will be could be an update or put. Let's do a put. And how can we handle it? Let's make this to be true, right? And that one should be over here. So we're going to update that particular ID, and we should be able to get it. Now, the put element is not created yet, so let's actually do it. So we have the get by ID, post, and we need to the put. Router.put the ID, we have that one, very neat. We're going to get it to do from the body, response from the, not from the add to do. Actually, we need to get the update to do. So let's see if it's actually got it. Yes, update the to do, and we're going to send the parameter ID and the to do itself, right? And then we have an error, Oops. We send the bar request and we send the error. If not, we send the status code OK and the updated to do. That should be enough. And we call it updated to do. Just remember. Um, return that one. How can let's do const updated to do is going to be that one, and this will be the element that we're going to return. Like that, updated to do. Yeah, that should be enough. Let's see if it works. So let's get all. Let's add a new one. And this new one that we just added is the one that we're going to update here to true. So let's send it. Complete it, change it to true. Right? We have the put element successful. And if we get all, we can see that, yeah, perfect. The false, the completed is false, and to do. Perfect. So we have pretty much everything. If we want to create the delete record, we can do the same. Just pretty much find it and splice it, remove it, whatever. In this case, I don't think we need to do it for the to-dos. We pretty much have the API done the way that it's supposed to be. The only thing that I would like to add now is a filter. I want to get the to-dos whether completers are false or true and get all of those right away. So let's try that. And that should be pretty much in the get to dos. So we're going to get the to dos there. Or let's actually get express query parameters. And let's look for that documentation, what we can do. So this the parameter, the way to get it. Page request query page. Yeah, pretty much. That should be it. That should be it. Just get the request.query and we should be able to get it. So for that, we'll be here in this one. So we're going to send what base to do, sorry, or get it to do's. We're going to make something, let's create a filter here. Let's create a completed. And it's optional. By default, let's actually call it like that. How can I actually do it? By default, it's null. No. No, I just forget it. How can it possible that I forget it? Functions, JavaScript, default value, optional, optional parameter, optional parameter. You just put a simple equal. Yeah. So this should be more than enough. Oh, that actually worked. Perfect. So by default it's null. So we can do something about that. So if we send the completed and by default it's null, we can do if completed is null, we're going to do all this, right? Else, we're going to do getting by completion, and we're going to return filter to do completed equal to completed. Yeah, pretty much. So what is the issue here? There you go. So if the completed is there, we're going to return that. If not, we're going to send that. Pretty much. So that means that here, and to get it to do, we did request dot query dot completed. Let's see if that actually works. Let's get all of them. It's working. Let's add a new one. Send, send, send. And we should be able to pull up 4. Yes. Let's change 2 of them. This one to be true. And let's change what other one? This one to be also true. And let's call it another. So we can have different text. We can actually update the text too. Oops. We didn't change it. Let's try it again. Update it to do that one, the body completed true, send. Okay, get all. There you go. We have 2 true and 2 false, so this one actually working. But if I send the completed to be false, it's not doing it the way it's supposed to be. So let's just verify that's actually working. Let's, it is not working because I need to have JavaScript text to Boolean. Mm. How can we do this? So we can do let's do const is true. If completed is equal true, we can do true or false, right? And we can actually say if it's completed, we can do now that validation in theory. Or we can actually do this right here, probably. But I didn't like it. Hmm. This should work. I don't know why it doesn't like it. Let's try this one. So let's get all completed false. If I do true, you should get only the true ones. If I get the false, you should get the false ones. Let a new one, add the completed false. Let's do true. Okay. If I remove this, it should pull up everybody. And let's change this one to be true. Let's get all again. We have a false and true. When I say completed equal true, if we get that one, you can get completed equal false. We just get the false one. And if we don't specify, we get everybody. So that's how we actually do a filter, but I don't know why I didn't like this. Mm -hmm. Hmm. Probably instead of 3, I can do something like this. Quick fix. Probably gonna do something like that. Let's see if this actually works. And then I need to find out how to fix this. Because we're sending this one as a text. So we get a false by default, is working. True should pull up nobody. And it's pulling it up. So no, it's not working. And here, let's actually do disable for this line. So we do true. It should not be able to. Oh, because I'm not sending it. But if I send the false, that one is there. Okay. So with this, we use the basic ternary completion, and we have a filter. So whenever the completed is there, we can actually do it the way it's supposed to be. And I believe that should be it. We have pretty much the hour. Let's add it rest of endpoints. And with this, we just have a full API that we created and we're able to consume using Node.js. We're able to read everything, to delete, and proceed and proceed. I just keep this one base to do just to have one to do at the beginning instead of having nothing. And that should be it. Next one, probably what we need to do probably is to robust this a little bit to add authentication. We need to add authentication to our app. And we need also to connect it to a real database. So probably we want to do that next week. So for now, I really hope that you like it. Any question, any doubt, don't hesitate to reach me. Happy coding, everybody.